The creation account in Genesis, the first book of the Bible, begins each new creation day with the words, "And God said." This video is about how the repeated phrase, "And God said," amazingly harmonizes with what science is currently discovering about the universe. In the third video in this Genesis series, I explained how Jesus, as the Creator, is the only one qualified to save us. John 1:1 says, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." John then describes the Word as the creator of the universe, and then describes the Creator as Jesus. Recent discoveries in science have shown us how insightful John was when he called Jesus the Word. And going back to Genesis, after the initial creation of the universe in Genesis 1:1, the text describes the presence of the primordial earth in verse 2, before beginning a series of specific creation days, each of which commences with the words, "And God said." So Genesis tells us that God uses words to create, and John describes the Creator as the Word. We know that words are information, and the idea that the universe needs information has been abundantly confirmed by scientific discovery in two main areas. The first area, which demonstrates that the universe needs information, is the uncanny ability of the language of mathematics to exactly describe the physical world. Math is how we depict the laws of nature. We do this by using formulas, which are short and elegant words that consist of symbols. These formulas and the symbols represent something non-material that exists only in our minds. So why is it that we can use this non-material mathematical language to describe the real physical world? Mathematicians have recognized the mystery of how non-material mathematics can correspond with the physical world. A famous essay in 1960 by Eugene Wigner called it a miracle that we don't understand. Many simply pass it off as a convenient surprise. But one of the greatest scientists who ever lived, Johannes Kepler, explained it using a three-part cosmic harmony: the plan in the mind of God, the natural world, and our minds, which were created in God's image. The first part of that triad is that God has a mathematical rational plan for creation that has existed from eternity in his mind. Secondly, when we investigate the natural world, we are investigating the material manifestation of God's plan. And the third part of Kepler's triad is that we were created in the image of God. And this is what enables humanity to study nature using observation and mathematics. We are able to have some understanding of God's blueprint for the universe. Specifically, we were made in God's image, so we are able to recognize patterns and regularities. Through these patterns, which we call physical laws, we can partially comprehend God's order and design. The mathematics we discover directly applies to the physical world because the language of mathematics forms the basis of these physical laws which God established. There is a mathematical basis for all physical laws. The first area which demonstrates that the universe needs information is the uncanny ability of the language of mathematics to exactly describe the physical world. The second area which demonstrates that the universe needs information is the multi-layered information stored in every living cell. The most important discovery in biology in the last 100 years is the structure of DNA, and that it is a 4-letter code that operates exactly like a language. But this isn't the only information we're finding. On top of the information coded in our DNA, we have recently found an even more intricate source of information outside of the DNA, called epigenetic, or outside the genome, information. We have discovered somewhere between 40 and 160 different epigenetic biological codes inside our bodies. All of these biological codes operate exactly like a language. And all of these 40 to 160 different codes or languages must interact and coordinate with each other to make life possible. One example is the sugar code. Sugar molecules, called glycans, are often attached to the outside of our cells and also to proteins. Information is stored in these sugar molecules by the way they are linked together. And here's how. Individual sugars called monosaccharides can connect to each other to form larger molecules made up of multiple sugars. These larger molecules are called polysaccharides. Monosaccharides bond together to form polysaccharides. There are many ways in which these sugars can link together. So the same set of monosaccharide sugars can form countless different polysaccharides. For example, 6 monosaccharides of a sugar dihexose can be linked together in more than 1 trillion, that's trillion ways. Each of these 1 trillion polysaccharides is different from the others. Each different polysaccharide can be thought of as a different word or a different phrase, and each provides different information to the cell. Here's a cartoon representation of some glycan polysaccharides. The squares, circles, and triangles represent different monosaccharides. I think you can see how many different ways these monosaccharides could be connected. Now, information can be defined as reducing the number of possibilities, or another way to think of it is that each time possible choices are removed, the amount of information is increased. Each specific linkage of a monosaccharide reduces the number of locations that other possible sugars could attach. This adds information to the glycan molecule by reducing the uncertainty in the possibilities for that specific glycan. Each new sugar that is added reduces the probability of what the glycan structure will be. This is analogous to writing a capital letter in the English language. Once a circle is drawn, you are limiting the probability of a specific letter to either an O or a Q. This type of information, called Shannon information, is a way of measuring the amount of information in a sequence of symbols or a sequence of connections between sugars. In addition, if a specific arrangement of symbols performs a specific function, then you not only have Shannon information, but you also have specified information, like a language or a code. This is why the specific information in the glycan structure is just like a language. It's both improbable and specifically arranged to perform a function. Evidence that glycans are a form of information comes from their operation as a code. For example, the code represented by the structure of glycans on the surface of our cells is responsible for intercellular communication. This code is a complex molecular language made up of 10 monosaccharide alphabet letters that can be arranged in a vast variety of structural polysaccharide words. The complex structure of glycans acts as a crucial source of information for almost every process in a cell. So in this way, the sugar code forms its own language that's crucial to life. Because there are so many ways that sugars can link together, the information coded in glycans contains significantly more information than the information coded in our DNA. And the sugar code is only one of at least 40 different codes inside of our bodies that must coordinate and interact for us to be alive. From what we have discovered about how precisely mathematics describes the physical world, and from what we have found inside living cells, information has come to be regarded as one of the most fundamental concepts in science. This information can be represented physically, but it is not physical itself. We know this because the same information can be transferred to different mediums and represented in different ways. For example, the information contained in a word we speak begins as a non-material thought before it is represented in the form of our vibrating vocal cords. Then this same information is transferred from our vibrating vocal cords into the medium of air in the form of a sound wave. And then it can be transferred to the medium of pen and paper. And then it can be transferred to an even different medium when typed on a computer. In the same way, the sugar code can be transferred from one medium to another. The sugar code must be read and interpreted by a different medium other than a sugar molecule, and then that information used to manifest something else inside our bodies. The information represented in a polysaccharide gets read and transferred into a different physical structure, which means that the information it contains doesn't depend on the medium that is used to display it. This is important to understand. The information forming the basis of our physical laws and the information necessary for life is non-physical or non-material. And the only source of non-material information that we know of is a mind. Therefore, it is reasonable to say that a mind supplied the information needed for the universe and for life. And this brings us back to the Genesis creation account. As mentioned earlier, each creation day begins with the phrase, "and God said." For the first 4 creation days, God speaking could represent the influx of mathematical information needed to set up the physical universe necessary for life. But when God speaks on the 5th and 6th days, this could represent the influx of information needed for life itself. Remember that John describes the Creator as the Word. Now, of course, we don't know if Moses, the traditional author of Genesis, we don't know if Moses intended the "and God said" lines in Genesis to convey that God was inputting information while he was creating. But what we can say is that it's rather amazing how the Genesis emphasizes that God created by speaking, by providing information. And what science is currently finding is that information is a necessary component for the universe to exist, and that information is present within life itself. So it is reasonable to conclude that structures exhibiting specified information like a language, or like mathematics, or like the DNA code, or like the sugar code, can only be the result of a mind. For this mind to have created all matter and energy, it must be beyond matter and energy, what we would call supernatural. John describes this supernatural creator as the Word. The Bible harmonizes with what we are discovering about the universe, and it is therefore reasonable to conclude that the God described in the Bible exists. Now, if you're interested in this and want to learn more about it, you can read these 2 books. John Lennox, his book 7 Days That Divide the World, and Thomas Woodward and James P. Gillis, their book Epigenetics and the Architect.